Date is February the 12th, 1998. Survivor is Michael Raphael Mandel. The interviewer is Ruben Zilberspick. The interview is being conducted in Melbourne, Australia, in English. My name is Ruben Zilberspick. The date today is the 12th of February 1998. I'm conducting an interview with Rabbi Michael Raphael Mandel in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Could you tell me your name and spell it?
Rabbi Michael Mandel, M-A-N-D-E-L.
How do you spell Michael?
M-I-C-H-A-E-L.
What was your name at birth?
Chaim Raphael ben Harav Hanoch Henoch Mandel.
Could you spell the first name, please?
Chaim, in English, it is C-H-A-I-M.
Your middle name?
Raphael is R-A-F-A-L, F-A-E-L.
What was your date of birth?
The 25th of June, 1928.
How old are you now?
69.
Which city were you born in, and could you spell that?
Shimleul, S-I-M-L-E-U-L.
What country was that in?
Romania at the time.
Can you begin by telling me about your family home in Shimleul?
It was at the lower end of the city, opposite Nagyfalusi út, not very far from the railway station. It was a two-winged large home. We were all born in the same room, known as the Kissoba, the little room. And all the 12 births had the midwife, the same midwife.
What was her name? Do you know?
That I can't remember that. She lived almost opposite our place. Two of her sons were eventually very fine how do they call them? Furniture manufacturers.
What else can you remember about the house itself? How many rooms did it have?
The one side where the little room was, we had there the dining room, 3 bedrooms, an enclosed veranda, kitchen, and the groceries and the food store.
How was the family home heated?
By fuel wood, which was chopped up and brought in as it was needed.
Was there a bathroom inside the house?
No, there was no bathroom.
How did you wash?
With a in a wooden trough. The water was heated on top of the kitchen stove, a huge pot, and from it water was taken and put into the wooden trough.
What were your parents' names?
Herman Mandel and Hermina Mandel.
Tell me about your mother.
My mother was born in Saslekense, that's in Transylvania, also belonging at that time to Hungary. She was the daughter of Rabbi Avram Shimshon Mandel. She was the only daughter by the first wife of my grandfather. She subsequently had 8 brothers by the second wife of my father. She was married to my father when she was 21, and took care of the 5 children of the first marriage of my father. She was 44 when I was born, and 48 when she passed away. She had leukemia.
What memories do you have of your mother?
It is not easy to describe. She was what we call in Judaism a real Eshes Chayil, a true woman of valor, but Eshes Chayil is much more than that in English. She was everything: a good daughter, a loving daughter, a loving sister to her brothers. She looked after grandfather for quite a while and was very caring about her brothers. Then she married my father, and I'm the 7th child of my mother. On one occasion I asked my father, which of your 2 wives did you like better? And he said that definitely the second one was the more mature. The first wife having been only about 16 when they got married. She was the daughter of Rabbi Akiva Porzer. But he liked my mother because of the care that she has taken of the first wife's children.
Do you have any memories of your own mother, considering you were only, as you said, 4 when she passed away?
Yes. She used to get up very early in the morning. She was an excellent dressmaker. She made all the dresses for the girls and all the play suits for the sons as well. She was an excellent cook. She prepared always fresh food daily. When we sat down to the table, we were never without some poor people joining us, particularly on Friday nights and Shabbos. And she looked after the household. She baked her own bread. She did everything herself. She would not. She would regard it as unheard of to buy bread from the baker, although we had kosher bakers in my hometown. She did her own lakshan and farfel, and she did all the preserves and syrups and jams and cabbage and beetroot and cucumbers and everything that had to be preserved or prepared for the winter or for Pesach or something like that. And she raised her own fowl. We had a large courtyard. We had geese, and we had chickens and so on. And she loved gardening. She had a beautiful flower garden. She was a very great artist. She painted beautiful, beautiful pictures. I remember particularly one chrysanthemum on a plain, pale green background, one chrysanthemum. You could always smell it. It was done by the time I was about 3, I suppose. She also was doing some very beautiful, fancy woodwork, this filigree woodwork. And I particularly recall the way she received poor people. And that is how I and my siblings learned how to handle people. With the utmost respect, compassion, and affection. I remember on Fridays there used to be an old gentleman who came along with the candle lighting times for Friday. And that was an excuse or a way of getting into a Jewish home. And whilst he did not ask straight out, he was meant to be given some consideration for the information, the little leaflet which he brought along. The leaflet was printed for him by our Jewish printer, Mr. Heimlich.
Could you spell that?
Heimlich, yes, H-E-I, M-L-I-C-H. And he was doing that so as to help him, that he could go around to Jewish homes and deliver that Shabbos candle lighting, when the Shabbos goes out and so on.
What was on the leaflet?
Just the weekly portion of the Torah reading, and saying that Friday, such and such a date, candle lighting is at such and such a time, and Shabbos terminates at such and such a time.
Do you remember when your mother passed away?
Yes, I very clearly remember that, but if I may just say how he received, when a poor man, when this man came, for instance, into our home, he immediately called the children. Children, Uncle so-and-so is here.
Do you remember his name, who Uncle so-and-so was?
No, I cannot, unfortunately. But I remember the face of the gentleman.
Can you describe it?
Yes, a rather kindly smile on his face, and someone who sort of reconciled himself to his lot of being a poor man, but always very gracious. And my mother called us in. Look, Uncle is here, and turned to Uncle and said, look, I just made some bit of chicken soup and I would like you to taste it to see if it's all right, it's enough salt, etc. in it. And of course a plate of soup was brought before him. And some little bit of chicken and a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a bit of tzimmes, a little farfel and all that. And before he left, my mother, may she rest in peace, she passed away on Tisha B'Av in 1932. She would say, look, I'll just, if you don't mind, take along a little bit to your wife and see what she thinks of it. She thinks she might think of my cooking. And this was the way, the gentlest way of putting a man at ease, giving him food which he ate with great appetite and was very grateful for it. Apart from, she also had prepared for him a little, some small amount of money to take it. And that was the way we have learned how to give tzedakah, how to give charity. What we call charity is a wrong name because it means righteousness, to correct an imbalance, so to speak. And my mother was a beautiful lady. She never used any makeup, but she was always very, very beautiful. Now this might sound like a biased opinion of a child, but truly she was the most beautiful lady. Beautiful skin, beautiful eyes, soft, loving hands. She had a very nice voice. She used to sing and she wrote poetry as well in Hungarian. It's hard to sum her up because she did help my father in business. If my father was away on business, she would receive the goods that have arrived. She would entertain the agents that came along and so on.
What business was your father involved in?
In several different kinds of business. One of them was corn and flour wholesale, stock feed, winery. We had vineyards as well as wine presses. At one stage, there was a firm, Mandel, and Kirsch, K-R-S-C-H. They had the Silvorium or the plum brandy still. They made the brandy, kosher brandy, of course. The wine he made not only for himself but for commercial purposes, and in fact Dr. Joseph Udvari, who was the U-D-V-A-R-Y, Udvari, he was a lawyer by profession, but when the Hungarians in 1940 entered my hometown, he was made mayor of the city. But he had vineyards of his own, and he was a great friend of my father. And he asked my father to make all his grapevine harvest into kosher wine, because it was more valuable that way. It was done under his supervision, my father's supervision. Later on, this Dr. Udvari, when the Nazis came in, suffered at the hands of the Nazis. because on one occasion when my father passed by, he on purpose, deliberately and demonstratively raised his hat and said, "Guten Tag, Herr Mandel. Good day to you, Mr. Mandel." And he was beaten up by the Nazi officers who happened to be on the footpath at the time. My father was on the middle of the road.
Were you there when this took place?
No, I was not.
Who told you about this?
Who told me about this? My father himself. But soon after this episode, my father was taken away.
You've told me a bit about your father's professional life. Can you tell me now about your father, the man, the father? What sort of person he was?
He was a very kindly man, very tolerant, demanding a great deal of himself, but being very, very generous in forgiving and understanding of others' ways. He was a great scholar. He taught us many things. He had a very extensive library, both in Jewish and Judaica, and in general knowledge, encyclopedias and all sorts of books, classics. He was very widely read. He was autodidacta. For instance, he never attended the commercial college in Klausenburg, in Transylvania, yet he obtained a diploma at the end of the course, which he did not attend, but he sat the exam, and he, without any trouble, passed with flying colors. He was the tutor, the private tutor of the Varadi Ullman family. They had 3 young men whom he tutored. And as a man, as a father, you couldn't wish for a better one. Always just. We were each one of us favorites of his. So there was not one favorite, but all the favorites. He could never bring himself to hit me. I remember once, as a young child, must have been when I was about 5, 6 years old. My 2 sisters, Theresia and Erna, as they called her Shandy, complained to Daddy that, Tubi and Shandy complained to Daddy that I was not behaving well that day, that I must be punished. It was for my good, of course. Not that I understood it at that time. But anyway, Father came home. He was phoned that when you come home, you have to deal with Fully, that's me. I was called Fully in my home.
Why was that?
Fully is the diminutive, endearing term for Raphael. Fully. So he came home deliberately late, hoping that I will be in bed by that time, and of course you can't hit a sleeping child. And when he came home, my sisters told him that, well, he says, well, I just came home, give me something to eat first. And in the meantime, he notioned to me, he says, you go to sleep, you go to sleep. So I just couldn't, from the expectation what might come. I couldn't go to sleep, but he ate and deliberately drew it out as long as he could. And then he asked my brothers to go out and fetch a little branch from the tree, and he was going to give me a hiding, but the hiding did not happen. He lifted up my cover, and he lifted up the thing, and he says, "I can't do it." He just couldn't bring himself to do that.
Did he ever use any discipline like that on you?
Never. It was probably because I was the youngest child, and I was an orphan from the age of 4, and he just couldn't bring himself to do that. But he did expect us to obey him, and we did. In fact, when he entered the room, we stood up and kissed his hand. He didn't insist on it, but we just did. We were vying with one another who will help him to do anything.
What language did you speak at home?
Hungarian. That was the language at home. The girls had a Fraulein, a German Fraulein, who was speaking French and German. She taught the girls both those languages, so my sisters were speaking both German and taught to.
Do you remember the Fraulein's name?
No, I can't remember, but I remember long after my mother passed away, when I was probably about 8 years old, 4 years later, she came along once on a visit, and that must have been 1936. She was a gracious old lady. Her Hungarian was rather accented, an accent, because she was German by birth, and she was very educated. And for a while, she taught my sisters several other things besides the language, such as embroidery, gobelin, and things like that.
Did she live inside the family home?
Yes.
Was she the one
who... She
who
had her own room.
After your mother passed away, was she the one who took care of all the children?
No, she could not. No, she could not. She was gone by that time. I mean, soon after my mother passed away, or maybe even, soon after my mother passed away, she was gone from our place.
So who did take care of the entire family?
Well, that's just it. We did have domestic servants